Welcome to Dandadan, the show that'll make you consistently say,
"Who the fuck are you?"
This one is one that I've watched recently, fellas, and normally I exclusively stick to romance or romance-related shows. However, when I heard that this show had decent romance in it, I decided to check it out. Now, I had already seen this show on Netflix. By seen it, I mean seen the cover of it. And I've also seen the homie Damien talk a little bit about it before. So, at the very least, I was intrigued by it. I decided I needed to get more onto the interesting stuff, get more on track with stuff that I could talk about, because last review, it wasn't my best work, I'll say that much. But welcome back, everybody. I'm going to be reviewing Dandadan Season 1 and Season 2 of the anime. Nothing from the manga, and also I don't want to hear spoilers from the manga, or I'm going to rip your ears out. That being said, I technically have to wait till 2027 for Season 3, but in the meantime, we're going to be covering what we got so far, so let's jump straight into it, people. Let's start off with the characters. So the main character is simply named Okarun. Well, that's not actually his name, but that's what he's called throughout the show, so it's essentially his name. Okarun is obsessed with aliens as well as various cryptids. However, he doesn't believe in ghosts. This is in contrast to Momo Ayase, which not popular, but relatively popular in school, and she believes in ghosts because her grandmother, who raises her, is a spirit medium. So she believes in ghosts, but not extraterrestrials. So that being said, Okarun ends up getting the power of yokai named Turbo Granny, which is essentially this. I'm not gonna bother really explaining it. If you've seen the show, you've seen it. It's a spirit that can run at unbelievable speeds, and it's this old lady, and she's got serious attitude. Also, she has a weird thing where she, like, takes your genitals when she possesses you. There's that. Or takes a part of it, but not the rest of it. Anyways, then we have another main character, Momo Ayase, who is kind of the star of the show in a sense. She's not the main I mean, both Okarun and Momo are main characters, so you could honestly say interchangeably that they are the main character. But anyways, Momo ends up getting abducted by aliens after this little deal that she makes with Okarun. We'll talk about that a little bit more once we start explaining the episodes. And she ends up gaining these powers, and the powers are essentially, to explain it, it's like a form of telekinesis, except it's a little bit more complex than that, I think. It's more like a blend of spiritual power and telekinesis at the same time. So anyways, then for other main characters, we have the grandma being Seiko, is how they pronounce the name in the English dub. She's the, supposedly, according to Wikipedia, 62-year-old grandmother of Momo Ayase. However, she looks like she's 32, minus the white hair. But even the white hair doesn't look unhealthy, it just looks almost like it's dyed, okay? She's also very fit. I had to look it up on Google. The only explanation I could find, essentially, was it's magic. She's using magic, and a lot of spiritual power is channeled, and it preserves her youth. She's also very active and eats a good diet and things like that, which, obviously, that being said, no 62-year-old looks like this, but still. Anyways, she's a spirit medium and also a complete menace that absolutely dominates every single supernatural, alien, and otherwise entity that appears anywhere around her. She's got some serious skills. She also carries a bat around. I don't know why she uses a baseball bat, but it probably is more so to play into her delinquent kind of role. We'll talk about the music more later, but I'd say she has the best theme in this show. Other important characters we'll briefly go through are Ira Shiratori, who ends up getting the acrobatic silky power. She's a sanctimonious, religious. It's kind of implied she's Catholic, or at least some sort of Christian denomination. Okay, it's not explicitly said, but it's heavily implied that that is the case. She's also got kind of delusions of grandeur, but she's really funny. She's one of the funniest characters in this show. That's pretty common with anime. Anytime you get a character that is intentionally supposed to be kind of insufferable, they end up being one of the best characters just because they're fun to watch. Then, lastly, for main characters, we have Gigi, who is one of the goofiest male characters I've ever seen in an anime. He's bouncing off the walls. He's basically like the male version of Marin Kitagawa, except without the cosplaying. He ends up getting possessed by the evil eye and then he has to work out like a deal with it. We'll talk about that more later. Then there's this man Sakata, who's basically just a Discord mod, and he's introduced, I'm not even kidding you, in the last 3 episodes, I think. Anyways, there's like a whole 8-minute section of one of the last episodes of season 2, and it's just this man, and it's just building him up. And I don't even know who this guy is. He doesn't really even have any powers, per se. He's just kind of a nerd. Moving on. So, we're starting off with Season 1 here, fellas. I'm not going to go through each episode too much, since with these reviews, I tend to expect that you've either seen the show or can watch stuff on it. Now, so one thing I will say real quick, just before we get started, is that all of the first episodes, like the initial episodes, I expected this show to be a lot weirder. This is not even close to the weirdest thing I've ever seen. In fact, it's probably not even in the top 10, honestly. Legitimately, it's not that weird. The first 4 episodes, I'd say, are pretty weird. Only because in episode 1, talk about what happens with the aliens, and then Turbo Granny, I already mentioned the thing with like how she takes part of your genitals for some reason. There's like a weird fixation around human reproductive organs, let's say, in the first like 4 episodes. After that, and then after the weird violation aliens, we'll say, get their rears kicked for like the 7th time, then the show doesn't really have any weird, technically, elements. Like, yeah, they spend half this show looking for Okarun's balls, essentially, which were, like, taken from him and turned to gold, and, like, me describing it out loud, yeah, it's pretty freaking weird. But overall, the show is a lot of just supernatural stuff happening, and they're fighting the supernatural stuff. I mean, like, there's probably weirder stuff in the show Supernatural than there is in this show, to be honest. And then once again, we'll talk about the music more later and how that plays a role, because Creepy Nuts, yes, that is actually the band name. They do a pretty good job with the opening for Season 1. So, Episode 1. I'm not going to give a full summary, but long story short, Momo and Okarun run into each other. And this is because Okarun is essentially, he's just pretty much doing nothing. He's getting bullied like usual. Momo just broke up with her boyfriend, and so she ends up defending Okarun from a bunch of these people bullying him, but then she doesn't really care about him, so then she gets up and leaves. But she was the first person he's really ever talked to in school, so he ends up going to her, and he starts talking about aliens and things like that. They bicker back and forth. She brings up ghosts. He doesn't believe in ghosts. They dare each other to go to these locations that have supposedly the thing that they were talking about. So Momo goes to a location known for alien abductions. She ends up going there, and then Okarun goes to this tunnel, which is where Turbo Granny's domain is, essentially. So they go there. Long story short, Okarun gets possessed by Turbo Granny, who's a yokai. Momo gets abducted by aliens, and then almost basically she's about to be inappropriately touched by these aliens, which for some reason need humans to reproduce. They specifically use human females. I mean, you think your evolution would have gone further than this. You know, given your technology, you wouldn't need another species to seed your own species. Like, what a stupid design, right? Anyways, they try to do that. Okarun bursts in. Turns out he's possessed by Turbo Granny, and he's resisting it. But then he ends up fighting the aliens, and the aliens also, by the way, look, their suits, kind of, quote-unquote, that they wear, they look like Japanese businessmen, which I'm sure totally isn't a metaphor for anything at all. And so anyways, he beats the crap out of them. Then they force him against the wall because they have, like, telekinesis. And then Momo ends up basically breaking out, and then she uses her telekinetic powers combined with spiritual powers. She's using her chi, which is like soul energy, kinda. She essentially channels that, and then she beats the crap out of the aliens. They break off the ship. The ship crashes, and then the two of them start walking, and they're heading toward Turbo Granny's tunnel. And so they do that. They start walking there. Turns out Okarun's name is K. And so she essentially says, hey, never say your name again, and then changes his name to Okarun. So that's his name for the rest of the show. On to episode 2, they realize that Turbo Granny only comes out really at night, or can only be accessed at night, I guess. And so they end up having to just pretty much go home and confine Okarun. So they do that. They keep him in a space where it's supposed to be safe, but there's a problem, because an alien sumo wrestler thing shows up and tries to kill them, and it traps them in this box, essentially. And this is where we see the first time Okarun used the full extent of his power, at least in a way that is somewhat controlled. So he uses it, they fight this thing, they beat the crap out of it, it's awesome. Moving on to episode 3, Granny shows up, and by Granny, I don't mean Turbo Granny in this case, I of course mean Psycho. She beats the crap out of Turbo Granny. She essentially traps Okaroon, who's possessed, keeps him there until they can figure out what to do with Turbo Granny. So, they all come up with a plan, and they decide, hey, we're gonna go to Turbo Granny and challenge her to a race because she's too arrogant to reject the race, and then we're going to lead her out of the vicinity of her power. So, episode 4, they do that, and they win. Now, Turbo Granny is still alive, technically, but she possesses this cat thing that I don't know what it's called. They use them in Japan. It's supposed to represent good luck. Which, by the way, I didn't know what the cat thing was at first, because I've seen clips of this show before I watched it, and I was like, I don't know. I didn't know what the freaking cat thing running around was. All I knew was that it was annoying and that it talked. In reality, that's Turbo Granny possessing the thing, which makes a lot more sense. Meanwhile, Okaroon gets his, his genitals back, essentially, or one of them. The other two vanish later in the next episode. He manages to still keep a lot of Turbo Granny's power, so he can use it for himself now. Next episode, we have some relationship drama between Momo and Okaroon. They're wondering, does the other person just hate me, not want to be around me? Since now that they've gone through everything, they figure, well, maybe there's no reason we should be around each other. Maybe they're avoiding me. Then they accidentally, quote-unquote, kiss each other. It's more like they hit their heads on each other and then their lips, brushed against each other, so not really a kiss, right? But they treat it that way. Of course, Momo's friends also see it. They have a lot of fun, which, by the way, her friends, which I only remember Kay, I don't remember the name of the other one, they make the school scenes very funny. They are some of the best side characters I've ever seen in anime. I really enjoy them. They're always doing silly stuff. Like, one time, Momo's zoned out, and they're using a mirror to try to reflect the light of the sun into her eyes to get her to snap out of it. And it just doesn't work, so they're like, yep, she's zoned out. It certainly works. I'm always messing with her. It's a lot of fun. That's pretty much episode 5. They also run into Ira for the first time, which obviously she's introduced as kind of antagonistic, which is to build up to the next episode. Episode 6, long story short, Ira finds the golden ball. She ends up using it, and it gives her ability to see spirits, which also gives spirits the ability to see her. So, she ends up going to Momo. Now, she thinks Momo is possessed by a demon because she can see, her aura, basically, and can see her spiritual power. So she thinks she's a demon. She goes and she basically kind of tries an exorcism, very, very amateurish exorcism on Momo in this abandoned warehouse, I think it was. However, this acrobatic Silky, as they call it, this spirit, shows up and then basically whips everybody into shape. So it kills Ira, and then the rest of them just have to fight this thing. And this thing, it's pretty sad, honestly. It thinks that Ira is its daughter, or was its daughter, and it wants to have her, essentially, but obviously everybody's fighting the thing. So, we move to episode 7, where the acrobatic Silky, we get to see its backstory, and oh boy, this episode has a 9.7 out of 10, by the way, in terms of rating. It is fantastic. This episode is one of the best episodes I've ever seen in anime, hands down. And on top of that little statement I just made there, this episode made me cry. There are very few times in anime where I have cried at anything, or, by cry I don't mean break out into a sob, okay? But still, tears running down your eyes. This episode did it. Episode 7, the whole backstory of the acrobatic Silky, that thing was sad. And then it fading away out of memory, that was a tearjerker too. And then Ira hugs the thing and says, you were a good mother and you did enough. Just, pretending to be her daughter, or in the place of her daughter. And the thing was able to move on, and so its power, part of it, was then vested in her. Anyways, this whole episode is just pure and heavenly peak. It is fantastic. It is very sad. I mean, I haven't had that kind of reaction since, the end of Your Lie in April. Which, even Your Lie in April, I mostly had a kind of negative reaction to it, just because I was like, dude, really? I just spent 25 episodes, you're on your deathbed the whole time. And I'm like, well, what now? In this case, this is just one other backstory, and they don't dwell on it too long. They have just the right pacing on it, and it is perfectly well done. So Ira is now one of the gang. She is now not friends with them, but sort of allies with them at this point in time. She becomes friends with them later. So in episode 8, after that, the acrobatic Silky fight is over, and Ira starts to develop, supposedly, feelings for Okarun. They're weird how they work. So after that, they get sent into this, basically, void, where they're at school, and then everything just, boom, turns black. And now they're in this space where everything's made of water and things like that. Turns out the aliens are specifically targeting them, and they're back. And they're back for Turbo Granny's power. Basically, the theory with this show that Okarun comes up with is that aliens want to capture yokai and various different spirits in order to learn from them so they can learn how to counter them, because yokai, spirits, ghosts, all that stuff defends Earth from extraterrestrial invasion. Which, by the way, his theory is actually kind of cool. I like it. Not to mention, you could say it makes sense. You know, like, that kind of thing, depending on how you look at it, could be true. I don't know, it depends on what you believe in. I thought that was a very interesting point, and it made you think, so props to that. Episode 9, they end up fighting extraterrestrials that were attacking them, and also the Loch Ness Monster is here, kinda. It's the quote-unquote Loch Ness Monster. It turns out that thing's also just another alien, and then they end up, like, fusing with it. It's confusing. Also, there's this thing that looks like a Pokemon that I'm drawing a blank on the name of, and it's basically, it's boxing them, essentially, is what it's doing. And it becomes an important character later as well, which is also kind of funny how everything comes into play. There's a lot of, not foreshadowing necessarily, but there's a lot of stuff that appears early in the show that is going to appear later in the show. And so they set everything up nice and early. So after that, they end up beating the aliens, and then they are out of this pocket dimension, essentially. But all of them are now stark naked on the floor in school in front of everybody. So everybody can see them. So that embarrasses them. In episode 10, there's this whole drama that happens at school. Ira ends up defending Momo, despite the fact that she should be slandering her. And then they end up becoming sort of friends. Momo and Ira do. However, they bicker all the time. They're like sisters, basically. I'd say that they're a lot like sisters, where they're arguing and bickering a lot of the time. You know, who's the leader, things like that. But, I mean, they're tight. They're fine. Also, that alien boxing thing that was in the last episode, it comes back. Now, don't try to figure out what the name of the thing is, because I have no idea. It's some sort of long alien name, and if it isn't Star Wars, I don't remember what the name of specific aliens are. Anyways, it's bleeding. They figure out that its blood is milk, essentially. And there's this disease or plague or whatever back on its home planet where its son has to have a blood transfusion every day. And, you know, blood's expensive. So it's been working shady jobs, essentially, here on Earth in order to make the money. But milk can be used in order to supply them with blood. So they use milk, and then it just decides to live on Earth. So that's pretty cool. He also says that if you guys ever need anything, he'll respond, and he'll be there. So that's sort of foreshadowing, because next season, he helps out a lot, and honestly, he's a real one. I like a lot of the characters in this show. I don't think there's a single character that I don't like, actually. Next up, we have the episode First Love, which is episode 11. I haven't been listing the episode numbers, but I've been going in order still. This is where Gigi appears, which is the childhood friend of Momo, which predictably makes Okarun pretty jealous. He's jealous of Gigi, he's jealous of the attention that he gets from Momo, and yeah, that's a whole dynamic thing that's created. Long story short, Gigi's been seeing this evil entity thing in his house where his parents and him live, and his parents are now hospitalized, and he needs the thing exorcised, and all the people that have gone to exorcise the thing have all died except for a few, and the other few resigned. Seiko sends Momo to exorcise, or to essentially analyze what's going on over at Gigi's house. Meanwhile, Okarun decides to go with them. This is where we get to episode 12. Let's go to the cursed house, where everybody files into this house. They look around, they don't find anything. This episode mostly serves as kind of a duel between Gigi and Okarun. Also, there's another thing that I forgot to mention, which is that the episode, there's this mannequin thing that sprints at full speed to look for another mannequin. I'm calling them mannequins. They're really an anatomical model is what they are, but the thing is, I mean, it's running, it doesn't make much sense. Anyways, this thing's like, I guess, possessed by a spirit, which is why he can run. His name's Toro, which is pretty cool. This thing ends up declaring its love for another anatomical model, which I don't even know what to say about that. But this inspires Okarun to say something to Momo. Now, he doesn't, of course, actually say anything to Momo because this is a nerdy character in an anime, but he at least gets the idea. He realizes his feelings. So that's step 1. Okay, step 2 comes in like 7 seasons. So with that being said, that's basically it for episode 12. There's these weird, creepy old men that pop out of nowhere while Momo is in the hot spring, and they're a part of the Keto family, and the Keto family are basically a cult that sacrifices people to this serpent god that lives in a volcano, or at least lives underground to protect the town from the volcano that's in the town. The spoiler alert, the serpent, it's a giant Mongolian death worm, so it's like Ark. So, we're on season 2. Season 1 ended off with a cliffhanger. Season 2 also ends off with a cliffhanger, but we'll get to that. So episode 1 of this is basically wrapping up the Keto family, and by wrapping it up, I mean they beat the crap out of literally everybody because they're Street Fighter characters, I guess. It's like Mortal Kombat. This old lady who's 200 years old is whooping everybody into shape like she's a My Hero character, which also, another thing, apparently she's some sort of subterranean creature that's disguised as a human, but I think it was pretty obvious that they weren't humans to begin with, given the fact that they're 200 and something years old and are still moving like that despite the fact that they all look like old ladies from the 1950s. Next up, episode 2, we get the backstory of the Evil Eye. So the Evil Eye has been the thing that was following Gigi around, and the thing's pretty freaking creepy. It's got a sad backstory like 90% of anime characters, and it's essentially trying to get revenge against humanity for things that happened in its previous lifetime. It is an entity of pure vengeance and pure emotion. It also thinks and acts like a child, which will be useful later on. So, the Evil Eye basically ends up possessing Gigi, and everybody learns that the thing under the ground is a Mongolian death worm, and it's using these telepathic waves to make everybody want to off themselves. Well, everybody except Gigi, who's being protected by the Evil Eye, because the Evil Eye wants to use him as a host. So, episode 3, Gigi gets possessed, and he ends up fighting the giant death worm. He also ends up fighting Okarun in one of the coolest fight scenes ever. We're gonna get to the coolest fight scene I've ever seen in anime a little bit later in this season, but this is sort of the prelude to that. So episode 4, the Mongolian deathworm gets killed after Momo dries it up with using the sun, except it causes the volcano to erupt, which obviously is bad news bears. So they end up trying to evacuate everybody. Meanwhile, the Keto family are still trying to beat the crap out of Momo and failing miserably. Momo gets all the fires put out with the help of everybody and their cat. So there's this dude who works at a shrine nearby. It ends up he's Seiko's kind of understudy, and that guy's pretty sweet. Then there's the alien boxer and his son, plus Seiko shows up. I mean, everyone's here. We got Turbo Granny, the cat. Everybody shows up to deal with this situation except for Ira, I think. She's the only one that's not there. So everybody's juggling a million things at once. They put out all the fires. Don't ask me how they managed to get rid of all that lava. I don't really know how the temperatures and everything work, so I can't speak to the realism of it, so I'm just gonna roll with it. Then we move on to episode 5. Momo rescues Okarun, and they make it home safely. That's pretty much it. Gigi's still possessed by the Evil Eye, but they use Toro to keep him in this, basically keep him in Toro's body to keep him from transforming, and they figure out that cold water transforms him into the Evil Eye, while hot water is okay for Gigi to use. So they basically keep a ticking time bomb around them until they can figure out what to do and they can exorcise the Evil Eye from him. So episode 6, we get one of the coolest episodes I've ever seen in an anime, which is We Became a Family, where basically every character that's been introduced up to this point, or every main character, gets to hang out together. They're all at home, or by home, I mean Momo's home, and they're all chilling. Then Gigi, they try to exorcise the demon using this rock band, which is also, I think, the first time I've ever heard a British voice actor used in an anime before, or at least in an English dub. I've never heard anybody with a British accent before, so I thought that was, you know, a unique element. I always like hearing new voice actors, which, by the way, a lot of good voice actors in this show. I don't hear these people a lot, so it's good that there's uniqueness. I sort of get tired of hearing the same people sometimes. So, this rock band creates an absolute melody. It is awesome, okay? Everybody's headbanging, everybody's having a good time. The thing's almost exorcised, and then Gigi begs for them not to exorcise it, which, what do you do when a demon tells you not to exorcise it? Well, you ignore it and exorcise it anyways, but they decided not to do that. They decided to keep the evil eye inside of Gigi, because I guess they felt bad for it, which, like, yeah, it has a sad backstory and all, but, like, get out of my body, dude. You know, you're an evil entity. I don't care what your backstory is. You're still possessing my body, and, you know, that's obviously not a good thing. So anyways, they canceled the exorcism. They say, hey, if you guys ever want to come back, then let us know. The band is called Hayashi, okay? These guys are awesome. So they pack it up. They leave through the rain, and everybody decides to keep Gigi around and just have him be really, really careful, which you can guess how that goes. So, next episode, the evil eye basically destroys the house and causes mass chaos, which results in some of the coolest fight scenes that are going to follow. So, after successfully beating the evil eye, once again, Okarun realizes that he needs to be stronger, so he ends up going out with Turbo Granny, episode 8, and then Ira comes with him. They end up fighting a bunch of classical composers for some reason, that, like, the memory of their spirits is lingering in this music classroom, music club room, or whatever it is. So they have to fight, essentially, the manifestation of a bunch of composers that have a bunch of weird, giant creatures and things that are popping out trying to fight them. They're using music notes like it's Mario Party to attack them. There's a lot of chaos. So they end up beating the composers in a really cool sequence. It was great seeing Ira and Okarun work together to fight something in that manner. The teamwork that's demonstrated in this show is peak. It is awesome. Okay? To see the level of cooperation. Normally it's hard to control multiple missing pieces in a show at the same time, but everything is just put together perfectly in these fight scenes. There's nobody where I'm like, hey, where's he at? You know, it's like, what are you guys doing over there? You just chilling while this fight scene's happening? What's going on? But in this case, everybody feels like they're doing something in a fight scene. Everybody's got a role to play, even if it's a small one. So the teamwork, especially between two people, oh, they're tag teaming. It is amazing. It's episode 9, is titled, I Want to Rebuild the House. So Okarun comes back with Ira, and he challenges the evil eye to a fight. Now, his intention is to basically, this is an SCP-096 situation, where he's going to outlast the evil eye and beat it so badly into submission that it'll want to keep fighting him and it'll have fun. So essentially, he's playing with the evil eye, because that's all the evil eye wants. It wanted somebody to play with it, because remember, it used to be a little kid, and the little kid just wanted to play with the kids that were outside while it was locked inside in this, creepy basement. So he essentially makes an offer after beating it into submission that he will only fight Okarun. So Okarun will only fight the evil eye. They will do it only on Tuesdays, so it'll be every Tuesday, and in return, the evil eye can't attack anybody else. And the evil eye agrees, so he basically has a playmate. Now, as for the fight scene that's in episode 9, this is probably the best fight scene I've ever seen in anime, period. It is amazing, okay? Every shot, every effect, everything. It was great. The dialogue, they're not constantly talking that smack the whole time. They're not constantly announcing their moves or describing what they're doing. They just throw hands. It is great. It was my pleasure. I was like a giddy little schoolboy watching episode 9. It was some of the best action I've ever seen. I had a great time. This episode alone made the whole season, okay? And the rest of the season was peak, too. I don't know how this episode only has an 8.5 out of 10, but some people were smoking crack when they watched this if they're rating it low. It was phenomenal. You should watch the show just for episode 9 of season 2, honestly. And then after the whole fight scene, they end up using these alien nanites, essentially, not the ones from Fortnite, to rebuild the house and put everything together. It's basically Minecraft. Oh, that reminds me. Also, there's a version, an obvious reference to Minecraft Steve that's introduced in the episode. I thought that was pretty funny. Episode 10, we get Sakura, the guy that I mentioned earlier. We basically get 8 minutes of that guy's introduction, and his introduction is literally just like a sub recap of the previous few episodes of season 1, okay? So the first few episodes, we watch it through Sakura's eyes, and he gets progressively, I can't tell if he's like jealous. I think he's jealous of Okarun is what it is, because Okarun gets the attention of Momo and Sakura doesn't, and Sakura's basically a World of Warcraft player, so he's like, what the heck, I should have all the women, you know, I'm smarter than you, what's going on? So after a little experience, Sakura ends up tailing Okarun and Momo, and Okarun and Momo get a lead on where the gold ball is. Okarun got one of the balls back, right? We all know what the ball is, so he got one back. Don't ask me how that works anatomically. I don't even want to think about it, okay? I don't, yeah. But as for the second one, they see the thing floating, so they just see, you know, a golden testicle floating around, and it turns out it is attached to an invisible machine, or what looks like a machine. It's really a suit for an alien. So anyways, Sakura, because he's a nerd that has knowledge of external fiction, he knows that this thing is just an alien using reflective panels. So they end up figuring out how to see it, and they break the thing's active camo. Turns out this thing is a kaiju. Or basically a kaiju. So the thing's suit increases in size, and it creates a mock Godzilla. So the thing ends up stomping around. It's basically Play-Doh Godzilla, and it starts lasering everything in sight, fighting everyone. So every single person, with the exception of the evil eye, for whatever reason, decide to fight the kaiju. They all fight the kaiju, and then they spend the next 2 episodes dueling this thing. So, last episode is Sakura. He ends up using the nanites, and everybody together makes a giant robot that is blatantly a Megazord. They make a Megazord. It turns into Power Rangers. So they make a Megazord, and they end up fighting this thing. So, kind of, I would say it's like Pacific Rim, but if you've ever seen Power Rangers, it's really more close to that. So they end up beating the crap out of this thing. Okarun's on the ground. He's kind of helpless to do anything more. He decides he may use the evil eye to fight the thing, but before he needs to do that, Sakura manages to save the day by figuring out how to control this giant Buddha statue Megazord that they ended up making, because the nanites form into whatever you're thinking, so it combines all their thoughts and makes whatever it is. So obviously Sakura wanted to make the giant robot, while Momo thought of a Buddha statue, and so it makes this giant thing. So they end up fighting it with the giant Megazord, and then they beat the crap out of the kaiju. We get a bunch of, you know, nerdy, this is what I've been waiting for all my life. Honestly, good for Sakura. I had a great time. And they beat the kaiju into submission. Then they scoop it up, Men in Black style, out of the public eye. Once it's out of the public eye, they bring it back to Psycho's house. They start to rebuild the house. Then the kaiju gets opened up by Gigi and Okarun, and it turns out there's an attractive alien inside of it. And the alien kisses Okarun. And then the season ends. Now, if you've seen my To Love Ru review, you know I really hate being left on cliffhangers. Not just cliffhangers, but with an unsatisfying ending. The difference is, this show is still ongoing, first of all. Second of all, this show actually makes progress. Third of all, it's actually way, way better, so then it's excusable. So, what are my thoughts on this show? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't quite say it's a masterpiece. There's some moments that are a little questionable, but oh my god, this show is a 10 out of 10 easy. So let's talk a little bit about some other stuff just on the side. Let's start with music. Season 1 has the best opening easily. I like the opening a lot. Creepy Nuts are basically the gorillas of Japan, or at least of, I think, J-pop, or is it J-rock? I don't know what the genres are. They're basically the gorillas, though, where you listen to the song the first time and you're like, ugh, I don't really like this. You listen to it a second time and you're like, oh, it's alright, I guess. And then you listen to it a third time and it's your favorite song, right? And so it works like that. The opening of Season 1, very fitting. It is great. Season 2 is opening, not my favorite, not the best opening I've ever seen for anime, but I mean, it's pretty decent. I wouldn't say it's top 10. The first opening is top 10. The second opening is good, but not my favorite. As for character themes, everybody has great themes. The music in this show is so wacky and so much fun. It uses a lot of, like, synthetic funk. That style is very great for this show. Seiko's theme is easily my favorite. It reminds me of the old lady from Hoodwinked. You know, the grandma, how she's just this master martial artist. It reminded me of that. Then Momo's theme is pretty good. But especially one of the best themes and one of the most well-known themes is the Paranormal Funk. That song is great. It is very well used in the show. It's like Momo's big brain theme, essentially, is what it is. Anytime she thinks of something, it's that theme that plays. It's like L's theme, sort of. As for additional details, I already talked about the voice actors. I'm glad to hear some unique interpretations of voices instead of hearing the same people. At first, I thought I heard Jade Saxton's voice, but I was wrong, which... Love Jade Saxton, but, like, you don't need to be in every show, so I was glad that it wasn't the case. It was actually somebody else. Abby Trott does a great job in this show, and I don't hear her voice a whole lot. In fact, I'm not sure if I've ever heard it at all, but she's definitely a great voice actress, and that's for Momo. As for Okaru's voice actor, he's also really good. Hope to hear more of him. So yeah, that's about it for all the details of this show. My overall opinion, this show's easy, 10 out of 10. It accomplishes what it wants to. It gets the point across. It is easily one of the most entertaining shows I've ever seen. I would say, legitimately, this is top 6 anime. Is it top 10 shows I've ever seen, period? Maybe. Maybe. It might be like number 10 or number 11 or something, but it is still really good. You know, because obviously, when I'm including general shows, I'm including, like, Star Wars, The Clone Wars, Stranger Things, not including Season 5, we'll ignore that. Gotham, stuff like that. But when it's just in terms of anime, this is probably my 6th favorite anime. Obviously, I still like Kaguya-sama, Love is War, Quintessential Quintuplets, that sort of thing. But this has its own place, and it is phenomenal. Now, what about the romance in this show? Because that's what a lot of this channel is. Well, the romance is really good. It's really well written. The chemistry is, I'd say it's just about perfect in terms of how it's applied. And I'm curious to see how they're going to balance the relationships with Ira and Momo, and who's going to get who, what's going to happen, that sort of thing. What Gigi's going to run into with all that. I'm curious to see where it goes. So, the romance is definitely open, and it's definitely well written. So, yeah. That's pretty much all I got today, fellas. I've gone through a lot of stuff. This is a very long review. Not sure if it's longer than the Spy X Family one, although I don't think it is because that has 3 seasons in a movie. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed and you want to leave a comment, please leave a like and tell me your thoughts. What do you guys think? Did you love this show? Did you think it was utter trash? Did you share my opinion and think this is one of the greatest things you've ever seen? Please leave a like, a comment, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a fantastic day and a fantastic life. Goodbye, everyone.
Who the fuck are you?